The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Consortium gleamed under artificial starlight. Hundreds of species from across known space filled the vast amphitheater, their varied anatomies accommodated by customized seating arrangements. At the center, a holographic projection displayed Earth, the blue-green home world of humanity, slowly rotating as if on trial. High Counselor Vexter Terra of the Selden Dominion rose from her hovering platform, her translucent tendrils glowing with bioluminescent patterns that signaled authority. Her voice, translated through neural interfaces, reached every being in attendance. We have deliberated for 7 cycles on this matter. The evidence is conclusive the human species presents an unacceptable level of risk to galactic harmony. Her tendrils pulsed with conviction. Their history is stained with violence, their emotions override logic, their genetic structure is unstable, prone to mutations we cannot predict. I move for immediate suspension of all human participation in consortium affairs. Laughter rippled through the chamber, not cruel but dismissive. Humans were a curiosity, a young species that had stumbled onto faster-than-light travel barely a century ago. Their rapid expansion had been tolerated as a novelty, their strange ideas sometimes even valuable, but tolerance had its limits. Ambassador Krellel, a hulking representative of the silicon-based Dern Collective, raised his crystalline appendage. I second the motion and propose we go further: full quarantine. Seal their wormhole networks, decommission their outposts. Let them mature on their own world before they infect the galaxy with their chaos. The vote was taken, the result displayed across the chamber's dome in pulsing light, unanimous approval. The human representatives weren't even present, they'd been delayed in transit. A diplomatic fiction everyone understood. Let it be recorded, Vexter announced. By decree of the Galactic Consortium, humanity is hereby restricted to their home system until such time as they demonstrate the capacity for civilized behavior. More laughter, polite applause. The delegates moved on to the next agenda item, the human problem solved with elegant efficiency. None of them noticed when the ancient emergency display system, installed during the founding of the consortium and unused for millennia, flickered briefly to life. Commander Lyra Kine stood at the observation deck of Proxima Station, the furthest human outpost from Earth. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, she watched the stars with eyes that had seen too much. At 42, she had spent most of her adult life building humanity's place among the stars. Now she was about to oversee its dismantling. Commander, her XO Marcus Chen approached with a data tablet. The consortium envoy is docked. They're requesting immediate implementation of the withdrawal protocols. Lyra didn't turn from the stars. How many of our people are still out there? 8,317 humans on various worlds and stations. His voice remained professional, but Lyra heard the tension. Most are being escorted to extraction points. And the ones who don't want to leave. The married couples, the researchers who spent decades on their work. Marcus swallowed, the decree doesn't allow for exceptions. Lyra finally turned, her weathered face set with determination. Give me the secure comm, I need to speak with Director Halsey one last time. In her private quarters, Lyra established the quantum-encrypted connection to Earth's Defense Directorate. Hiller Halsey's face appeared grim but composed. It's official then, Lyra asked. Yes, the quarantine begins in 48 hours. All humans must return to Sol system or be considered in violation of consortium law. Halsey's eyes reflected the same disbelief Lyra felt. They're shutting down the wormhole network as we speak. Soon the only way home will be conventional drives, months or years of travel. They can't just erase us from the galaxy, Lyra protested. We've built alliances, trading partnerships. Hell, some of our people have families out there. The vote was unanimous, Lyra. They're treating us like children having a timeout. Halsey leaned closer to the camera. But there's something else, something off about this whole situation. The timing, the sudden unity against us. What do you mean? Project Lighthouse, it's ready. Lyra's breath caught. I thought that was theoretical. Not anymore, and given what's happening, the president has authorized immediate activation. Halsey glanced over her shoulder, then back to the screen. You're the furthest outpost. Once the network goes down, you'll be isolated. I need you to. The transmission dissolved into static. Lyra tried to re-establish, but the quantum link was gone. Either Earth had cut the connection or someone else had. She stared at the blank screen, then at the small data chip Halsey had transferred during their conversation. Project Lighthouse, a contingency no one had expected to use. Commander Marcus called through the door. The envoy is becoming insistent. Lyra slipped the chip into her uniform pocket. Tell them I'll be right there. On the consortium homeworld of Aventrial, junior diplomatic attaché Zethaner of the amphibious Morgan species was working late. His scaled fingers moved through holographic files, organizing the aftermath of the human quarantine vote. Most of his colleagues had left to celebrate. The humans had been a persistent complication in galactic politics, too innovative, too unpredictable. Their removal from the equation simplified many calculations. Zethaner didn't share their enthusiasm. In his 8 years working with human diplomats, he'd found them fascinating, flawed certainly, but vibrant in a way many older species had forgotten. His console chimed with an urgent alert. The planetary communications grid was experiencing anomalies, nothing serious, brief interruptions in programming, momentary static, easily dismissed as technical issues. Except they were happening synchronously across different networks, different technologies, even different planets. That wasn't a malfunction, that was coordination. Zethaner's gills fluttered with excitement as he began tracking the pattern, his analytical mind piecing together what others had missed. These weren't random glitches, they were a signal hidden in plain sight. When the first clear image broke through on his private terminal, Zethaner gasped. It showed a human medical team working frantically to save a young Selden child during the Enva colony disaster. The footage was raw, unedited humans covered in alien blood, using their own bodies as shields against falling debris, screaming orders and encouragement to each other. A caption appeared in standard galactic script. They told you we were dangerous. We showed them what humans really fight for. The feed cut to another scene, human scientists distributing food during the Great Famine on Dern, using experimental replication technology that the consortium had deemed too risky. Thousands of silicon-based life forms survived because humans had ignored the regulations. More footage followed, humans standing against corruption, humans dying to protect alien allies, humans breaking rules to save lives. With each clip the same message repeated: they banned us from the stars, but they cannot ban the truth. Zethaner's terminal suddenly returned to normal, the images gone as if they'd never existed. But he knew what he'd seen, and as his communication panel lit up with confused messages from colleagues across the galaxy, he realized he wasn't the only one. Someone had just declared information warfare against the consortium's decision, and they'd used the consortium's own networks to do it. Back on Proxima Station, Lyra faced the consortium envoy, a tall, elegant threen named Ambassador Callus, whose feathered crest rippled with barely concealed impatience. Commander Kine, we have a strict timetable. Your station must be decommissioned and your personnel evacuated within 36 hours. Lyra nodded calmly. We're proceeding as ordered, Ambassador, but evacuating a station that's been operational for 15 years takes time if done safely. Safety protocols can be expedited under these circumstances. Not by me, Lyra held the threen's gaze. My people will leave when they're ready, with their dignity and their essential belongings intact. The ambassador's crest flattened, a sign of annoyance. The consortium's decision is not personal, Commander. Your species simply requires more time to develop appropriate restraint. Is that what this is about, restraint? Lyra laughed softly. You know the funny thing about humans, Ambassador Callus, when you back us into a corner, restraint is the first thing we abandon. Before Callus could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency lights pulsed red. What is happening? The ambassador demanded. Marcus rushed into the room. Commander, every communication system just activated simultaneously. Our archives are broadcasting. Broadcasting what? Lyra asked, though she already suspected the answer. Everything, mission logs, first contact records, scientific discoveries. It's all pouring into the galactic network. Ambassador Callus's translator struggled to convey his outrage. This is a direct violation of the quarantine order. You will cease transmission immediately. Lyra spread her hands in a gesture of helpless confusion. I would if I could, Ambassador, but it seems our systems have developed a mind of their own. As if on cue, the large display screen in the conference room activated. Footage began to play not just from Proxima Station, but from human outposts throughout the galaxy. Hundreds of feeds showing humanity's contributions to galactic civilization over the past century. The truth, unfiltered and raw, flooding every channel. What have you done? Callus whispered. Lyra watched the screens, a small smile forming. We lit a lighthouse, ambassador, because the galaxy needs to see what's being hidden in the dark. On worlds across the consortium, beings of all species watched in stunned silence as their entertainment systems, information terminals, and communication devices displayed the same unexpected content: human history, unfiltered and uncensored. Their wars and their healing, their failures and their triumphs. On Aventriel, Thanner compiled everything he could capture, recognizing the historical significance of what was unfolding. The broadcast shouldn't have been possible. The consortium's communication security was supposedly unbreakable. Yet it was happening, and as he watched beings around him react to the footage, he saw something: unexpected recognition. Not everyone had supported the human quarantine. Many had simply remained silent, but silence was no longer an option. The last image to appear before the broadcast ceased was simple yet profound: an ancient human spacecraft, primitive by current standards, with the words Voyager emblazoned on its side. It had been launched centuries ago, carrying messages of peace and information about Earth to the stars, long before humans knew they weren't alone. The caption beneath it read, "We were reaching for the stars before we knew you existed. We won't stop now." Then the screens went dark, leaving billions of beings across thousands of worlds with the same question burning in their minds: what if we were wrong about them? The Awakening. The emergency session of the Galactic Consortium was called within hours of the broadcast. The Grand Chamber, usually a model of decorum, echoed with angry voices and accusations. High Counselor Vexter struggled to maintain order, her bioluminescent tendrils flashing warning patterns. "This unprecedented breach of our communications network is exactly why the human quarantine was necessary," she declared, silencing the chamber momentarily. "They have demonstrated once again their disregard for law and procedure." From his seat in the junior diplomatic section, Thanner watched the proceedings with growing unease. The speed with which the council had convened was unusual, the forceful way they were shaping the narrative even more so. Ambassador Krell's crystalline form vibrated with simulated outrage. "We must strengthen the quarantine, cut all remaining links to human space. Any being harboring humans must be sanctioned." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, but they weren't universal. A delegate from the methane-breathing Confederacy raised a tentacle. "Before we escalate further, should we not address the content of these transmissions? Some of the footage showed humans sacrificing themselves to save our people during crises the consortium failed to address adequately." Vexter Terra's tendrils darkened. "The selective editing of historical events is propaganda, not evidence. The vote has been taken, the matter is closed." But Thanner could see it wasn't closed, not anymore. The images had resonated with too many beings, awakened too many questions. The council was rushing to contain not just humans, but the truth about them. He slipped away from the session, mind racing. There was more happening here than a simple quarantine of a troublesome species. Much more. On Proxima Station, the atmosphere was tense but focused. After the broadcast, Ambassador Callis had been invited to comfortable but secure quarters while Lyra and her team worked against the clock. "They've accelerated the timeline," Marcus reported, rushing into the command center. "Consortium vessels will reach us in 18 hours to forcibly decommission the station if we haven't evacuated." Lyra nodded, unsurprised, and the analysis of the Project Lighthouse data. Dr. Amara Akaffer, the station's lead scientist, looked up from her terminal. Her dark eyes were troubled behind holographic displays. "It's worse than we thought, Commander. The data Director Halsey sent shows systematic suppression of human achievements in consortium records, patents altered, discoveries reassigned, our contributions erased." "That's illegal even by consortium law," Marcus said. "It gets worse," Amara continued. "The quarantine vote wasn't about our emotional instability at all. Look at these resource surveys." She projected a star chart showing systems near Earth. Highlighted regions pulsed with data about mineral deposits, rare elements, and strategic positioning. With humans removed from the equation, these territories revert to consortium control. It's not a timeout, it's a land grab. Lyra studied the map, fury building inside her. "So the broadcast worked, we showed the galaxy what's happening, now what?" "Now we need to leave," Marcus urged. "We've made our point, but we can't fight consortium warships." "We're not leaving," Lyra replied calmly. "At least not all of us, and not empty-handed." She activated the station-wide communication system. Attention all personnel. As of this moment, Proxima Station is invoking Emergency Protocol 7. Voluntary evacuation begins in 2 hours. Those choosing to remain report to Section D for briefing. This is not a drill. Marcus stared at her. Protocol 7, that's for hostile first contact scenarios. Seems appropriate, doesn't it? Lyra's smile was grim. The consortium just declared war on humanity, they just don't know it yet. Deep in the administrative complex on Aventriel, Thanner moved through shadowed corridors with practiced stealth. His diplomatic credentials gave him access to most areas, but what he was doing now would be considered treason if discovered. The central archives were supposedly open to all diplomatic staff, but certain sections remained restricted. It had taken careful manipulation of his access codes to reach the secure historical repository where the oldest consortium records were kept. The chamber was dimly lit, filled with data crystals organized in chronological order. Thanner moved to the section covering the period just before humanity's discovery of faster-than-light travel. What he found made his gills flutter in shock. The consortium had known about Earth for centuries, had monitored humanity's development, had deliberately delayed contact until certain conditions were met. And worse, had engineered conflicts on Earth to test human responses, to measure their potential threat level. The deeper he searched, the clearer the pattern became. The consortium, or at least its ruling members, had feared humans from the beginning not for their violence or emotional instability, but for something far more threatening to the established order, their adaptability. Humans learned too quickly, innovated too readily, questioned too persistently. And so a plan had been implemented. Allow humans limited access to the galactic community, but ensure they remain dependent on consortium technology. Restrict their expansion, monitor their development, and when the time was right, find a reason to remove them from the equation entirely. The quarantine wasn't a recent decision. It had been planned for decades. As Thanner prepared to leave with his evidence, the lights in the archive flared to full brightness. He turned to find Ambassador Krell blocking the exit, crystalline form glittering menacingly. Curiosity is a dangerous trait, Junior Attaché, Krell's voice resonated through the chamber. One you share with the humans, it seems. Thanner straightened, knowing denial was pointless. The consortium exists to promote cooperation and advancement among all sentient species. What you've done to the humans violates every principle in our charter. Principles are luxury items, young one. The consortium exists to maintain stability. Humans are inherently destabilizing. Krell moved closer, towering over the amphibious diplomat. Did you really think your access to these archives wasn't monitored, your sympathy for humans noted? This isn't about sympathy, it's about justice. Thanner's gills flared defiantly. The broadcast showed the truth, others will ask questions too. Questions can be redirected, Krell's crystalline appendages clinked together ominously, as can those who ask them. Thanner backed away, calculating his options. They were limited and none ended well for him. The humans won't accept this exile. You've seen what they can do with just information. Imagine what happens when they decide to fight back physically. They won't get the chance. The quarantine is just the beginning. Once isolated, more permanent solutions can be implemented. Krell's faceted eyes gleamed. You should have stayed in your comfort zone, Junior Attaché. Now you've become part of the problem. As security drones entered the archive, Thanner realized he had only one option left. His webbed hand reached for the emergency beacon hidden in his diplomatic insignia, a direct line to the one ally who might still be able to help. On Proxima Station, 36 hours after the broadcast, 2/3 of the human personnel had evacuated. Those remaining 107 volunteers gathered in the reinforced central hub. Engineers, scientists, security specialists, and support staff, people with few ties to Earth or those unwilling to abandon what they'd built. Lyra stood before them, her uniform bearing the hastily created insignia of what they now called the Free Human Alliance. The consortium ships will arrive in 4 hours, she announced. By then, we need to be ready. Ready for what exactly? Asked Sergeant Diana Rivera, head of station security. We're outnumbered and outgunned. Not as much as they think. Lyra nodded to Amara, who activated a holographic display of the station. Proxima Station was built with certain undocumented features, Amara explained. Defense systems beyond standard consortium regulations, power generation capabilities that don't appear in official records. We've been preparing for contingencies since the beginning, Lyra continued. Director Halsey suspected something like this might happen. Project Lighthouse wasn't just a communication plan, it was a survival strategy. Marcus stepped forward. The real question is, what's our endgame? We can resist for a while, but then what? Then we negotiate not as exiles but as equals. Lyra's voice hardened. The broadcast changed things. Right now, across the galaxy, beings are questioning the consortium's decision. We've created leverage. A technician rushed into the room. Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission diplomatic emergency channel. Source, Lyra asked. Aventrial, it's weak like it's being jammed, but... Put it through. The main screen flickered, showing a dimly lit chamber. Zethanner's scaled face appeared, his features tense with fear. Commander Kine, there isn't much time. I've discovered the truth about the quarantine. It was planned years ago. The consortium fears human potential. They're planning something worse than exile for your people. The transmission became garbled. Zethanner glanced over his shoulder. I'm sending data now, evidence of deliberate suppression, falsified records. Use it. The majority of consortium species don't know what their leaders are doing. The sound of forced entry came through the speakers. Zethanner's expression became resolute. Humans have allies, Commander, more than you know. Find them, unite them. The consortium isn't the galaxy, it's just the ones who have been in control too long. The transmission cut off abruptly. Did we get the data? Lyra asked. Amara nodded. It's still coming through, encoded in a burst transmission. Start analyzing it immediately and prep the defense systems. As her team rushed to their stations, Lyra turned to Marcus. Change of plans. We're not just defending this station anymore. We're starting a revolution across the galaxy. The aftermath of the human broadcast continued to ripple through societies on countless worlds. Beings began to question narratives they'd accepted without thought. Archives were searched, records examined, inconsistencies noted. The consortium leadership scrambled to contain the situation, issuing statements dismissing the broadcast as manipulated propaganda. But doubt, once seeded, grows quickly. On trading worlds where humans had once been welcome partners, protests formed. On academic stations, scholars demanded access to unaltered historical data. In the methane clouds of Vox Prime, ancient philosophers began composing treatises on the ethical implications of species-based quarantine. The narrative was slipping from the consortium's control. And as the battle for Proxima Station began, a human ingenuity against consortium, might something unexpected happened. They weren't fighting alone. Merchant vessels from a dozen species accidentally blocked consortium warships. Communication relays experienced convenient malfunctions. Supply chains to consortium military forces developed mysterious delays. Small acts of resistance, plausibly deniable but coordinated through channels the consortium couldn't monitor or control. The underground network that Zethanner had helped build now activated in humanity's defense. 6 days after the broadcast, High Counselor Vexter faced a chamber in revolt. Junior members had called for a vote of no confidence. Evidence of corruption and conspiracy had been made public not by humans this time, but by the consortium's own members. This council has lost its way, declared the Volk's representative, his translation echoing through the chamber. We were founded to unite the galaxy, not to persecute species based on potential threats or economic gain. Ambassador Krell and his allies fought desperately to maintain control, but the momentum had shifted. Too many questions had been raised, too much evidence exposed. When the final vote came, it wasn't unanimous like the quarantine had been. It was divided, contentious, painful, but decisive. The old leadership was removed, investigations launched, and the human quarantine suspended pending review. 1 month later, Lyra Kine stood in the newly established Embassy of Humanity on Aventrial. The room was crowded with representatives from dozens of species, some long-standing consortium members, others from independent worlds that had watched recent events with interest. The road ahead won't be easy, she told them. Trust has been broken, wounds inflicted, but humanity doesn't seek revenge. We seek partnership, equal partnership. At the front of the gathering, a newly appointed diplomatic representative stood Zethanner, his scales bearing the scars of his imprisonment, but his eyes bright with purpose. The consortium was founded on noble ideals, he said. Ideals we lost sight of over millennia of unchallenged power. Perhaps we needed humanity to remind us what we were meant to be. He raised a ceremonial chalice. To a new beginning, not humanity alone, nor the old consortium, but something better, something we build together. As the representatives raised their diverse drinking vessels in agreement, Lyra allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had come so close to being erased from the galactic stage. Instead, they had rewritten the rules of engagement. Humans weren't perfect, they were emotional, sometimes irrational, occasionally violent. But they were also inventive, compassionate, and unwilling to accept injustice, even when fighting it seemed impossible. Outside the embassy windows, the night sky of Aventriel glittered with stars, no longer silent, no longer forbidden. Each one a possibility, a potential home, a future to be shaped by all sentient beings working together. The ban had been meant to silence humanity. Instead, it had given them their most powerful voice. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.